All right, so we left off the last time talking about um, fertilization techniques and comparing and contrasting the costs and the benefits of internal versus external fertilization. All right, so now we have a fertilized egg. All right, we've got embryos. Past that, there are two more reproductive strategies that we need to discuss: R strategy and K strategy. R strategy is when there are many eggs produced, but there's no additional care after fertilization occurs. So a lot of times this is going to be a concept that occurs in our external fertilizers, but it can also be in internal fertilization strategy as well. The key is that the care doesn't exist after fertilization. So with this, after fertilization, the survival rate is extremely low. Less than 1% of the offspring survive to adulthood, we're talking about. So the organism saves energy in that it's not putting energy into care afterwards. As soon as egg and sperm are released and or fertilization occurs, they wipe their hands clean and they're done and can go on trying to get ready to reproduce again, right? So they can, typically in the strategy, they can reproduce more often. They're saving energy in not putting a lot of care into it, but they're also using a lot of energy because it's actually very energy costly to create that many egg and sperm, and then to go through the process of attempting fertilization only to have a small percentage survive, right? So that is the cost versus benefit on that one. K strategy is a little bit different, and this is what we are more familiar with. K strategy is where we produce, where organisms produce less offspring, so there are less embryos to start with, and then they invest more energy into nourishing that embryo and protecting it. And sometimes that protection can last for years after the fertilization event occurs. So typically they still only have a few offspring survive to adulthood, but it's a large percentage of their initial offspring compared to that of our strategy. So in this, there's costs and benefits to both. It just depends on the organism.
I believe this is the first time that there's been any aerial footage of nursing of a baleen whale, and especially in a blue whale, I do believe it's the first. We are studying blue whale population in the South Taranaki Bight region of New Zealand and along the west coast of New Zealand that has been recently documented. And we're trying to get some baseline information about the population, what they're doing there, and their behavior. We came across a pair that we could see from the vessel. We were about 100 meters away, that we could tell by the size difference between the two animals that one was a mother and one was a calf. It's a bit of a guess how old the calf is, but we think the calf is probably about 4 to 6 months old. Whales and dolphins have to coordinate breathing with lactation, and what we can see in this video is that the calf is alternating between coming to the surface to breathe and then going under its mom for a period to suckle. The animals are basically stationary, so we don't think that this was sort of a position that would help locomotion. Once lactation is done at what's estimated to be about 5 or 7 months, the calf is considered weaned, and then it should go off on its own at that point. So these animals are generally solitary. They can aggregate on feeding grounds. Seeing this activity, this nursing activity, as well as the 5 mom-calf pairs in this region, definitely shows us that this population is reproducing, and it's an important area for moms to come and raise their young. The South Taranaki Bight has a fair bit of industrial activity from oil and gas development, and there's also vessel traffic through the area. And so there are a number of human uses there that we just need to be able to manage appropriately in terms of protection of these blue whales and their habitats.
So that was obviously case strategy, because this mother is providing months and months of care after fertilization, not only just after fertilization, but after birth. So the mother is continuing to provide nutrients after birth. We know that it's a whale, and as we're going to talk about, whales are viviparous, meaning that they have a live birth, and the offspring develops in the uterus and is sustained via a placenta. So that's a lot of care. That's months and months of care going into just getting ready to birth the calf, and then also additional months of care afterwards. All right, so before I actually play this, full disclosure, there's nothing graphic in this. However, this is killer whales that are attempting to attack a baby humpback whale. So if that's going to bother you, I will give a brief explanation after this, so you can kind of just try and fast forward through this part. And I'm just going to go ahead and talk over this video now for those of you that are still watching this part. So this is I'm going to go ahead and point some things out. So you guys can see the smaller ones that are mostly black. Those are our orcas, or as you guys are probably more familiar with them, killer whales. That orca just crashed into the baby, or the calf humpback right there, and you can see the mother is underneath it. So what's happening right now is that the orcas are trying to drown the calf, and what the mother is doing is the mother is actually going underneath of the calf and supporting it. Because these are mammals and they breathe air, the calf is at serious risk of drowning right now. And so the mother is literally hoisting the calf up and trying to hold it up. This is an extremely exhausting situation for the mother, because she is not only having to haul herself out of the water more often than she would normally, she is also playing defense against the orcas, and then she's also holding her calf up on top of that. So that calf is pretty large in comparison of the size of the mother, so this mother has been protecting this calf for a long time already, and so this just goes to show you the energy investment on protection into the offspring, not only just nourishment. Full disclosure, the baby lives, it's fine, the mother's fine, the baby's fine, the orcas go away, and I'll let you trust me on that. All right, so a couple examples. Tuna are our strategists. We have already talked about tuna. Tuna are using external fertilization, but that doesn't necessarily make them an R strategist. What makes them an R strategist is that after fertilization occurs, they just let their eggs float to the surface and they literally never see them again. So there's zero input into parenting after fertilization occurs. Tuna produce up to 25 million eggs per year, so that goes into the putting lots of energy into creating offspring, lots and lots of offspring, but not a lot of work into making sure that they actually live. These do external fertilization, and again, there's no care for the larval fish. What happens with tuna, and I'm going to play this and just talk over it. So what you're going to see with the tuna is, here recall shoaling, so this is a shoal of tuna, which by definition is a, excuse me, which is by definition a school of, or a group of fish swimming together, and the important part is that they are of the same species and the same age, meaning that when they get to sexual maturity, they're all sexually mature, and you can see just how many there are in this school here. They swim in circles in order to create like a vortex. So when they spawn, not only are they close to each other, but also the egg and sperm remain in a concentrated area, which only increases the chance of fertilization. Once the fertilization occurs, so here's where we're talking about our strategy. Once the fertilization occurs, the fertilized egg just floats to the surface in the open ocean. It hatches pretty quickly. They develop and hatch and develop pretty quickly after fertilization because you pretty much have to if you're going to be left alone and have to do this all by yourself. So think about this. It floats to the ocean surface, again, because that's where the food's going to be. And also where in the open ocean, there's no cover, no habitat aside from the like sargassum mats that are going to be out there. So our strategy, no care. Sharks are case strategists, but they're they don't put as much work into their offspring as whales do. Whales are the ultimate case strategists. But I do want to talk to you guys about 3 of the methods that sharks use. I have seen at least one question on a previous ACE exam where you have to talk about these strategies in particular, so we're going to go over them. The first one is oviparity. So oviparity is what you can see right up here. This is a skate. On the right here is the skate after it's hatched from the egg and swims out. What we see in the middle here, this weird thing, this is called a mermaid's purse. It's a egg casing, and inside you can see an underdeveloped skate, and then on the left side there you can see a completely underdeveloped skate. This would be an embryonic skate, and then the thing attached to it is actually the yolk sac. So why case strategists for these guys? They have internal fertilization, they lay eggs, and they actually choose places to attach and lay their eggs. They do put in some sort of care defending the area after they lay them. So oviparity is like the minimalist of the case strategy. Ovoviviparity and viviparity are case strategy because the embryos, after fertilization, the embryos are actually allowed to develop inside of the womb of the mother. So they are allowed to fully develop to this stage right here inside of the womb, and then they are live birthed. The difference between the two, ovoviviparity is going to be involve eggs. There are eggs to start. So the mom has fertilized eggs inside of this womb, and eggs grow and develop in there, and then there is live birth. Viviparity is what we are familiar with, and that is where the embryo is nourished by a placenta instead of an egg yolk. So more similar, or actually really similar to how humans go through a quote-unquote pregnancy. All of these strategies yield an increased chance of survival from birth. So from the time that they're let out into the world, the nurturing that went into the post-fertilization care is significantly, the survival rate is significantly higher than some of the other organisms that just kind of let things go and hope everything goes okay. It is important to note that the young do leave the area shortly after birth because their parents are not good parents for very long. If the parents get hungry after birth, they will, in fact, sometimes eat their own young. One thing I would like to take a second and focus on is ovoviviparity, and I've got a video that I'm going to show you. Again, this is going to be one that's slightly more graphic than the killer whale one. Full disclosure, I highly encourage you to go ahead and stay tuned and watch it. Otherwise, again, if you are not down to watch that, you are welcome to fast forward, but you'll miss all the good stuff.
Its cousin, the sand tiger shark, has evolved a far more extreme response to a dwindling food supply. Embryonic cannibalism. When its own yolk sac runs dry, a sand tiger embryo, no longer than a human finger, will rely on hunting instinct and a set of tiny, primitive teeth. These are no milk teeth. They are for killing. Sand tigers produce 1 or 2 embryos every day. After the eldest grows its teeth, it begins to hunt down its brothers and sisters. Although blind, the shark can sense his younger siblings. Before they can pose a threat, it's time for a series of preemptive strikes. The once crowded womb has become home to just a single living embryo. Now there's food aplenty. It can gorge at will on their yolks and their remains. From this point on, the mother will produce no further embryos. Instead, all her resources go to her surviving offspring. This is footage from an actual sand tiger womb. The mother continues to produce unfertilized eggs for her maturing embryo to eat. It continues to grow in this eggy soup, swallowing up the yolks along with the bodies of its less fortunate siblings.
So this strategy is really amazing because it depends on it. It essentially makes sure that whatever offspring are going to be let out into the world are the ones that are best suited to compete. So they're the ones that have developed the fastest and are growing at the fastest rate. That makes them better competitors for anything else once they are actually birthed into the world. It makes them better competitors and decreases competition for food once they're out. So this strategy is really interesting and unique to these particular organisms. All right, last one we're going to talk about is just whales. And again, we've already hit on a lot of the major points on whales, but I just want to hit them again because they're a big topic. Whales are viviparous, so again, they have internal fertilization to start, and then on top of that, they have embryonic development and fetal development inside of the womb. They are nourished by a placenta. Gestation, so the mother is quote-unquote pregnant for 10 to 16 months. So that 10 to 16 months is 10 to 16 months of them providing care and nourishment and costing them energy. One calf is born. So there is a ton of energy in preparing to birth one calf. After birth, that single calf is cared for and protected for up to 11 months. On top of that, certain species of whale, not the blue whale because we've already talked about the fact that they're solitary, but lots of different species of whale like orcas are community whales and they live in pods, and so the calves are not only protected by the mother, but they're also protected by the entire pod. So they are taught by the pod, they are protected by the pod, and then they are directly nourished by the mother via mother's milk. A lot of times, whales will stay with their parent groups and or their pods until they're sexually mature. So until they're adults. All right. So the energy input into one calf is incredible, but they are nearly ensuring that an almost 100% success rate that the calf is going to reach sexual maturity and have a shot at passing on their genes, which again, our drives here are, I need to eat, I do not want to be eaten, and I would like to reproduce successfully. So with that, we're going to go ahead and end that. You've gotten enough information on the basics of the strategies and some of the key vocabulary. So what you guys are going to do next is actually go ahead and start learning about the life cycles of some of the marine organisms, and then what I want you to be thinking about are these type of strategies. Is it R strategy or K strategy? Is it internal or external fertilization, and why?